themselves on the basis. Outside the shelter, you don't resettle these people. The resettlement process is a policy of locking them up, blocking their freedom of movement is not only principally wrong, it is wrong on a part to resettle themselves. The other thing that I want to say is about safe homes. That the duty to protect is that of the state. My duty is to point out these needs. So we insisted that the state should give protection. Dastak is the first government shelters in the world were also given that facility. So I think this is something that we must understand. When there are private shelters, should be given, should fulfill that responsibility and protection should be given there. Even today, when center in crisis. But at the same time, don't overburden. For instance, when we realize that women can't just sit around and be protected, they must use that time for some who know about these things. We are not the experts on skill training. But then we realize that 3 or 4 of skill in connection with those to that woman. And that linkage is built, and if she wants to do further skill training, the relationship between the shelter and the woman who leaves the shelter is always there, where you are. And she knows what you can do for her when she needs. I knew that she trusts us. She knows she will be helped. And if the violence has been repeated, she knows where to come. So that positive angle shows that counseling, mediation, the fact that the family whose presence on the ground makes it possible for that woman to mentality and have more access to that community. Another approach was bring women together. If they are to their families or they want to go back, they don't want to go back to the families. We group them, see what kind of women they are and how much can you match them. Then you have to see whether they have the capacity to exist independently, but they group and it is unpredictable and they don't want to be held accountable. Sometimes it is mullahs who are being appeased. Sometimes it is somebody else's interest that has to be taken care of in terms of this custodial restraint that I am talking about. Every shelter superintendent has said to me, you are right, this should not be done to women. The Supreme Court has given judgments on this, saying this is illegal. However, this illegal practice continues at the behest of the government, and it's the government policy. And they used to say to me, you can take...
Are rich, they are poor. And of course there are many other classifications, but that impacts their experience of violence and the redressal mechanisms and how the commission recently conducted a study on the status of women in Punjab. It was based on it was trying to understand women's economic and social well-being, in which we included violence against women as well as other forms of, which included domestic violence, physical violence, sexual violence, but other forms of violence such as child marriage, etc. And we found that women's experiences varied. So, for example, women with disability experienced violence more than women without disabilities from family members other than husband. We also found that women who were divorced or widowed experienced greater violence from family members other than the husband. And sometimes the difference was a little significant. So hence, the outreach and the redressal mechanisms also need to be different. We also found that the incidence of, or rather, the exercise of decisions, the decision making of women was very little, which contributes, of course, to the violence against women. So, for instance, in terms of making the decision of marriage, we found that 66% of the decisions on marriage were made by families, the girl's family as well as the boy's family. And in only 2% of the case, the woman herself made the decision. That takes you to why that woman is victimized when she does make that decision, because when she does, she's considered a rebel. If only 2% are making that decision, then there's something wrong with that particular woman. Similarly, in terms of access to resources, ownership of assets, we found out that it hovers between 11 to about 30% only, which includes ownership of ownership also. So ownership of vehicles, for instance, for women hovers around 2%. Only 2% women own vehicles in Punjab. And I'll tell you that the figures in Punjab are in many instances better, and that is borne out by the Pakistan Demographic and Health Survey, which has recently come out, the most recent one. But still, it's only 2% women who own cars. It's only 7% women who own land, and similar numbers of women who own houses. This contributes to women's empowerment or disempowerment, and then ultimately their experiences within shelters and post shelters, of course. So with that, I want to go towards what policies, interventions have happened, what pilots have been done. I'll tell you that I've worked on violence against women and shelters also for many years, and I alluded to it on the fact that for many years I have been working as part of Shirkat Women's Resource Center, of which Kaur was the executive director.
And I'm sure if there's a quorum issue, I will be under scrutiny for being here. But anyhow, thank you for inviting me. सबसे पहले तो let me say very categorically, I am not an expert on this issue. So I learn from the experts, which is all of you sitting here, and take your inputs also as to what the government should do. Of course, there are many demands on the government. A couple of things though. Government has limited resources. Somebody talked about the Women in Distress Fund. The Women in Distress Fund is used sparingly when we really feel the need is there, because it's a very limited fund. But अब जो हमने कर दिया है कि our ministry has with the law ministry or rather helped the law ministry draft a formal legal aid structure. So it's going to be formalized, and it's going to be available in a formal structured way. And hopefully the law ministry will expedite ke jaldi ho jaye, so that there will be a provision for legal aid for anybody seeking it, and not just women. And that is one thing. Our actions are also limited because, as you know, after devolution, all these issues have devolved to the provinces. But nevertheless, we do take up cases. We have a helpline, which, by the way, has become extremely active. And women call us, other people call us, and whether it's in the provinces or in the federal capital, we do take action. We have 5 lawyers who are linked to the helpline, and we have 3 of them present at any given time. And we do ring up the police if we need to. We give legal advice where we can. And one other thing we have started are awareness programs. The first one we started is on inheritance rights of women. And we have also formed a group of volunteer lawyers in every district that we have presence of lawyers who have volunteered. And any woman can call us on the helpline, and we will direct her to the lawyer closest to her. So this is something that we have established a couple of months ago. It's not a perfect solution, but at least it's something that is there for the present till we formalize our structures on providing more effective formalized legal aid and assistance. Also, of course, on transgenders, I'm trying to relate to the issues that were raised. Yes, the transgender law exists, but it's limited to the capital, again, because of devolution. We have, since I came into the Ministry of Health has cooperated. We have already created transgender wards in PIMS, and the Ministry of Health is committed to giving priority to free medical treatment of all transgenders at PIMS. And the health card that our government is issuing will be given on a priority basis to transgenders. So that is something we have started to do. Roseanne has volunteered, and we are going to take their offer up. We want to start a sensitization program, police ke liye, on transgenders especially, and we will meet and we're going to discuss that. Also linked, let me just inform you that I myself have personally started a child abuse awareness program. I've been to one school, I'm going to go to other schools. But again, we are restricted to the federal territory, where we have little videos which civil society groups have prepared for us. Sherry is one of those groups. And we've sent those videos to PTV. They've played them for about a week or two. We are hoping that the private media channels will also play them. And of course, by the way, they're all in Urdu, so it has a vast outreach. And we go and we talk to school children and teachers about different issues relating to child abuse, including good touch, bad touch, and so on. And the response that we got from the first school we visited was tremendous, especially from the teachers who said, Ke shukar hai, this subject is no more a taboo subject and the government is actually prepared to talk about it. So there are small steps that are being taken, but there was talk about bureaucracy, where bureaucratic structures and government processes are a bane for everybody, I can assure you. We have inherited a very cumbersome bureaucratic system, but we need to learn how to work around it because it's not going to change immediately. The important issue is we have to rethink our approach towards abuse of women, violence against women. I totally agree with Hina about this protection with dignity, because you do have these two pulls. One is to treat the woman who comes into a shelter or a crisis center, as we call our ministry's shelter in Islamabad. We try to treat them as victims and vulnerable, and we want to keep them protected, and you don't want them to go out, you feel their lives may be threatened and so on. On the other hand, then you're not enabling them to stand on their own 2 feet. And the other issue, so we have to find a balance between these two, giving them the ability to stand on their own feet and be able to assert themselves, and providing them the protection that they need from the people that they have actually come away from, who were practicing violence against them. But I totally agree that they cannot be kept there under restraints. They're all adults, and the choice eventually has to be made by them. But it should be an educated choice. They should be aware of the dangers, and that is something we need to do. Also, we are now looking at this, traditional approach. You want to give women in the shelters a way to get back into society, to stand on their own feet, to learn how to earn a living. And the traditional means is a sewing machine and embroidery. As someone who never got into embroidery in school, needlework in school, I find that that is really not one of the best options. So what we are now doing is we're talking to some people in the private sector. We want to establish a computer center training for the women in the shelter. We are also talking to some women who volunteered, who will come and teach the women how to, for example, prepare things to sell in the market like jams and pickles and so on. So, things that are more updated, where they can really assert themselves and earn a living. And yes, if they want to still do needlework and sewing, that too. But that should not be the sole focus, because then you're also compartmentalizing that women are only good for doing XYZ. And that's not how our society is evolving. We have women pilots, for heaven's sakes, in the Air Force. So we have to get out of this mode of sewing machines and embroidery for women, seriously. Also, I totally agree it's the duty of the state to protect the women. The state should protect the women. It needs to have regulatory provisions for women's shelters, and we are going to look into that, how we can work with civil society, private sectors who already have shelters, and the experts like all the women here who work specifically on women issues and have actual experience of working with women. And that is why we intend to work a lot more closely with Roseanne and any other women's group that actually has experience on the ground and wants to come and work with the government. That is something that we are always open to, because we feel that that is extremely important, the government and civil society partnership in a way. I also want to say that we are now about to introduce a law to protect women's inheritance in the sense that औरत को ज़मीन मिल जाती है या घर मिल जाता है and 2 days later the brothers will come and say sign away the property. So we're trying to bring in a law when no inherited property can be transferred for at least a year, so that the woman is able to strengthen her hold on her inherited property and be able to protect it. That law has been drafted by the Law Ministry. It's a fairly extensive law, and I think it's going to be introduced in the next session of Parliament, and we should be moving forward on that. So that is one of the ways that we are looking into how the rights that are given to women vis-a-vis inheritance are actually implemented. And we do take support when we need to from the Council of Islamic Ideology, because their reach, they have a mass appeal, whether you like it or not. And we've been very lucky. For example, the person who's heading the Council of Islamic Ideology prepared a whole introduction which we've used in the awareness campaign on women's inheritance rights. So where we can use them, we will, because if the fact of the matter is that when you're reaching out to the rural areas and outlying areas, if they're able to come up and support your agenda, it has much greater acceptability. And for that, we are in fact liaising with the council on certain issues. We're also going to be talking to them about child abuse and hoping that they will help us in that field as well. Also, somebody raised the issue of, which was not quite part of this particular issue, but I will come to that because it just so happens that we've done some action on it today. But I had a whole thing prepared of all the things that the government is doing and our broad strategy on empowering women, elimination of forms of violence against women, because I've discovered to our horror that although there are laws in the provinces against domestic violence, apparently there's none. No, we have now drafted the bill.
I drafted it 3 years ago.
But I don't know what happened to it. Previous governments, it got lost. But we have drafted it and we have sent it to the Law Ministry because it was a big something missing here and very important. So we have done that. And hopefully that will now come about. Also, of course, our on people with disabilities bill, which of course the previous government's lady who introduced it as a private member's bill, and for some reason with a big thumping majority the government still wasn't able to pass it through, has said that we've stolen the bill. Well, let me assure you, we've not stolen anybody's bill. The first bill was also drafted by our ministry and given to the lady MNA, but that bill had a lot of shortcomings. We redrafted that bill. We have a very extensive bill now which has been approved, and it just has to go through the cabinet now, where it will shortly be placed. No, sorry, it's gone to committee already. The Committee on Human Rights today has finally got a chairperson in the form of Bilawal Bhutto, and hopefully that bill will be one of the first things on the agenda. So that bill will also now finally be implemented, because for 5 years nobody was implementing it. As I said, we have the shelter or the crisis center that we have, and it's open to women who are single and women who are with children. It's not a very big facility, but it's a facility that is actually quite good. It's run pretty well. And a lot of the reason, one of the main reasons that it's run effectively and we have resources is because of support from the private sector, from individuals. And also I must say UN Women has helped us a lot in sustaining the shelter and providing us with the facilities that we ask them to on and off. So we have that as well. We also, of course, want to make the National Commission on the Status of Women much more effective. I think somehow you have more powers than you think you feel, and you should be more assertive about them. And now the rules have been framed also, so that will give you more empowerment, because you can implement a lot of things there. A lot of the issues, I feel that we have, sometimes we're over-legislated. बहुत कवानीन बन गए हैं, इशू इन्फोर्समेंट का है, और नॉट जस्ट इन्फोर्समेंट, इशू अवेयरनेस का है. अब आप लोगों को अवेयरनेस होगी, शहरों में अवेयरनेस होगी, दई इलाकों में, रूरल एरियाज में कोई अवेयरनेस नहीं है. सो अवेयरनेस इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड अनदर थिंग दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट विच वी निग्लेक्ट इज़ एक्चुअली डॉक्यूमेंटेशन. मैरिजेस गाँव में नहीं डॉक्यूमेंट होती, child birth नहीं document होती, because women give birth in their homes and they are not going to go and find a place to register. So UNICEF has started a couple of pilot projects on how to increase documentation of births. We think that we want them to expand, and we're working with them. We feel a little incentive for the woman to come out of her home and register the birth would be an ideal way to get documentation done. The other thing that we need to do is, everybody, different groups talk of human rights violations and human rights abuses. We have no proper database on human rights. We have now finally done 2 workshops to establish an MIS. We're doing it with UNDP, where we at least establish a database of human rights. So that is something that is also being done by the ministry. I think we still need to do a lot more, but we have begun, because obviously our focus in the Human Rights Ministry is, yes, on women and children, but it's on a number of other human rights abuses as well. Because frankly, while you can focus on women, but unless the human rights situation across the board improves, women's human rights will not, or women's status will not improve in isolation. So basically what our focus is on, a more holistic approach where basic human rights, and including enforced disappearances, torture. Our bill is again ready for the first time, and that is also going to come in the next session of Parliament. All these issues have to be dealt with simultaneously. You can't have stop violence against women, but you're allowing torture. You can't have protection of women when you have men dying in custody, custodial deaths. So we also need to have an overall holistic approach to implementation of human rights. And that is something that we really have to work hard towards, with the support of civil society, because we need to have not just work for the dignity of women, but the dignity of every citizen, and not just adult citizens, dignity of the child as well, protection of the child. So these are things that we are working on. We hope to learn from the experience of the professionals, because I said at the beginning, I am not an expert in this field, but that is why we want the expertise to talk to the government, to tell us off if we are wrong, to give us course correction, but also to support us and work with us, so that together we can move forward in the field of human rights. And I just want to bring up the issue of the death of Lunisa. या आज वो फंक्शनल कमेटी सेनेट में जो मीटिंग थी, वी ऑल अग्रीड कि द FIR should be registered immediately, because the post-mortem report shows that there were head injuries, how they happened, but it should be investigated. So that is a decision that has come about. We also discussed Professor Amar Jan's issue, and the decision, my recommendation from the Human Rights Ministry, and the committee also took up that recommendation, was because the police from Punjab came and said, yes, there was no great issue involved there, and it was only creating a nuisance by blocking Liberty Chalk. So we suggested that, as somebody who comes from a party that has protested and done dharnas in many public places, that cases should be withdrawn against all the 5 people on which cases have been registered. And I have a feeling that that may be what happens. So I was just telling you about that particular thing. Is there any other question that was raised that I need to answer? I don't think so. But seriously, Hina, I hope that you know, I sometimes feel that my best friend who's sitting in heaven now will be having a good laugh, thinking that instead of defense or foreign affairs, here I am dealing with human rights. But that thought keeps me going. Okay, you know, That's the inspiration, and also a commitment that I will show her that I can do it. And
मेरी एक दरख्वास्त है
हाँ
आपसे
बताएं.
कि लेजिस्लेशन जब आप बनाते हैं तो उसको जरा उसकी तशरीह करें ताकि आपको अच्छी एडवाइस मिल सके.
बिल्कुल
इनहेरिटेंस वाला लॉ अगर मुझे फ्लॉड लग रहा है
नहीं, हमने
तो
लॉ
इसकी
नहीं
सब
बनाया.
खासतौर पे सोशल जो मसलों के लेजिस्लेशन है इसकी पहले तशरीह करें, इसकी डिबेट कराएं एंड देन यू विल गैदर बेटर विजडम.
इनहेरिटेंस का लॉ हमने नहीं बनाया, हम तो सिर्फ इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कर रहे हैं. बट दिस इज़ व्हाट आई एम सेइंग कि आप हमको जो लॉज ऑलरेडी बन गए, अगर आप उनमें अमेंडमेंट्स चाहते हैं, आप हम हमारे साथ आके एडवाइस करें कि जी ये लॉ, अब जैसे आप इनहेरिटेंस का कह रहे हैं, इफ़ देयर फ्लॉज इन इट, point them out to us and then we will bring an amendment in the law. Disabilities bill हमने consultations किए हैं, तो हमने उसको because it hadn't been passed yet, it was easier to draft a new bill. हमने उसको फिर सही किया because we consulted the stakeholders in it. And on a number, most of the issues, we do consult the stakeholders. For example, the Christian marriage and divorce bill, which was suspended because the Christian community was not agreeing on it. Eventually, we told them that, look, this is a rough draft, you give us the draft. And in November, December, they finally came and said, okay, we have now done a consensus and this is the draft we want, and that is the draft that we have now forwarded to the law ministry, and that also within a month or so should be laid before Parliament. So our policy in my ministry is definitely on any issue, consult the relevant stakeholders, because we do not have all the information and neither are we the experts in a number of these issues. So yes, Hina, and I hope that you will also come and give us advice. And
Whenever it's worth it, I will.
yes, please do. It will always be worth it.
Collaborate with governments, but I certainly engage with them.
We don't want you to collaborate. We want you to engage and discuss with us and give us your suggestions. I know your position that you will not collaborate, and we wouldn't want you to have the label of collaborator. But nevertheless, engagement. And we want to engage with women working in different fields with their expertise. And maybe there are some play areas where there are actually no laws and laws need to be drafted. We would welcome suggestions on that as well. Our ministry is open to anybody coming and wanting to give suggestions and having discussions. So please feel free to do that. But come with some concrete proposals. So that we can move forward. We can have long-standing debates on issues and, the politics of issues. But what is more useful, I think, is to come up with concrete proposals and say, okay, we are willing to give you this expertise if you're prepared to help us implement an agenda which we think is for the betterment of women, for children, for citizens in Pakistan. Because if our democracy has to strengthen, then human rights have to be strengthened, because without that, you're not going to have substantive and meaningful democracy. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
The participants of the research who share their experiences with us and actually help us how we can take this further. I'm very thankful to the Honorable Minister, Madam Shireen Mazari. Thank you so much, ma'am, and we will be in touch with you.